Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is episode 181, recorded on December 5th, 2017. If you want to see all of my shows, you can go to my website, walkinthepark.tv. We put them all up online there, and you can watch them anytime. This one will be up soon by the end of the week. And this is a public access television production series, weekly series in Ithaca, New York. And you can go see all of our weekly series in our schedule and find out a lot more about Pegasus Public Access TV in Ithaca at pegasus.webstarts.com. Pegasus stands for Public Educational Government Access System. So there's 3 different channels. One is for the public, to get trained like myself and be able to borrow equipment and use a studio and so forth to make your own shows. And then there's educational coverage from the various educational institutions around here, particularly Ithaca College, and then covering government meetings and that sort of thing. Like our Facebook page, go to @Pegasus TV on Facebook and like us, and a lot of our shows will be put up online there, or at least links to them anyway. And also some of our latest shows are on our website, so check that out. Okay, so this week we're going to go over to the valley that is south of Seneca Lake, so Watkins Glen area. And actually they call that valley south of Seneca Lake. Let's take a look at that here. There's Watkins Glen labeled up at the top there. The south end is Seneca Lake. They call that valley Catherine Valley, and you'll find out why they call it Catherine Valley. And there's actually a trail, a Catherine Valley Trail through there. And we're going to go, you look sort of just next to center there, you see a label that says Aunt Sarah's Falls. If you drive south of Watkins Glen on Route 14, you come to this sign on one side of the road. It's a little bit tattered. They need to do a little paint job on this. This is on the left side of the road. And it says, "Welcome to the village of Montour Falls," which is just beyond. Just you can see it there, that label, just beyond this spot. And straight ahead is Shequaga Falls, which is in the village of Montour Falls. But across the street, as that sign indicates, is Aunt Sarah's Falls. So let's take a look at Aunt Sarah's Falls. There we go, right there. What am I going to say about this? This is, okay. Aunt Sarah, I got to get some stuff written down here. Okay, here we go. This is actually a photograph from. Well, the photograph isn't from it, but this is information from a guy named Scott Ensminger, whom I met years ago when I worked for the state parks. And he's written some books and taken a lot of pictures and done a survey of waterfalls in New York State. And he says it's 90 feet tall. And upstream from Aunt Sarah's Falls is a series of falls with a total drop of 120 feet. So according to local legend, Aunt Sarah was an Indian wife of an early settler to this area who jumped to her death from the falls. And at one time there was a rock carving of an Indian woman's face near the base of the falls. It was reported destroyed by men believing that there was gold hidden behind it. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of stories like that about Indians jumping off cliffs in some of our various gorges and waterfalls around here, and I think most of them are bogus. But people like to make up stories for the tourists. So we're going to take a look at this falls. I've got some video of it. This is a pretty nice spot. It's right next to the highway, so it's kind of a weird association right there. But it's a beautiful waterfall. So let's go to my video of Aunt Sarah's Falls. A few miles south of Seneca Lake in New York's Finger Lakes region is Aunt Sarah's Falls, splashing down the steep valley wall to Route 14 near the village of Montour Falls. Okay, so that's a very pretty waterfall. There's not always water on it, though. I don't know what it's looking like today, but later in the summer and in the fall, there's usually not a lot of water. I was there in June. That's when these pictures were taken. So there's a lot of waterfalls on the valley here. Let's get back up to our picture here, our map. You can see this kind of a groove that goes south from Seneca Lake, and this is a groove that was carved out by the passage of glaciers over the past couple of million years that just dug out this groove and redug it and so forth. And the southern end of it has been filled in by glacial till and streams and waterfalls and so forth that have dumped in earth over thousands of years since the end of the Ice Age. But the sides of the valley are very steep, and because of the passage of the glacier, so that's where we tend to get our waterfalls, and also, of course, our gorges, which are where waterfalls, if they have enough water, will cut back into the rock, because the weak shale rock won't stand up to a pretty heavy flow. Aunt Sarah's Falls, that creek there, does not have a lot of water, so flowing on, it's often not much water, so it looks like it hasn't cut back into the hillside much to make a nice gorge. So let's take a look at our sign again here. Pointing, it says Shequaga Falls in Montour Falls, straight ahead on Route 14. Head on down. It's actually not on Route 14, the falls itself, but there's Aunt Sarah's Falls. Now let's go take a look at the map. Now it says Montour Falls, and just underneath Montour Falls, and that label there, just in center, lower center, it says Shequaga Falls. So it's right down in the village of Montour Falls. Here we zoom in on Montour Falls. So that's the village of Montour Falls there, and right at the end of the street, there is Shequaga Falls. There's a gorge you can see coming from the lower left up to the right, up to the center, in Shequaga Falls. So here's a nice sign. This is a very popular spot. It's not near the highway, so it's very quiet, and it's on side streets. And let's see. Here's a picture of it here, and it's about, I think it's like 156 feet high. See what my notes on that. Yeah, I believe that's what I wrote down. Yeah, it's said to be 156 feet high, so that's a substantial waterfall. That's about the same height as Ithaca Falls, and so it's a popular falls. Again, this was in June, so we had a nice water on it. And there's this historic sign here: "Tumbling Waters, a sketch now in the Louvre, made about 1820 by Louis Philippe, later King of France." Well, I searched all over to try to find a picture of that sketch that's supposed to be in the Louvre. Well, I couldn't find that, but I got a picture of Louis. So there he is. There's the guy that made the picture before he was king. So let's go. We're going to take a look at a short video of Shequaga Falls. So let's check that out. Here, going right here. Yes, coming right up. Well, it's going to look like this pretty soon. It's going to get all ice over it like our other waterfalls, at least next month maybe. It's not too cold yet, but next month or February, it's going to ice up. And you don't want to go climbing around these waterfalls. You probably shouldn't climb around this anyway, but particularly some of the ones that have gorges you go back in. Of course, we close most of the gorges around the Finger Lakes, at least in the state parks, because of the ice hazards and falling rock and so forth caused by freezing and thawing. So, well, in the valley there is another glen, actually, called Havana Glen, and I believe this picture was taken near there, and it's a historic marker, of course, again, Queen Catherine. I mentioned Catherine Valley. That's where we're in. Catherine Creek Catherine Valley Trail. Queen Catherine Montour, 1710 to 1804, was the Seneca chief and matriarch in Iroquois Grand Council, liaison to the colonials, widow of Chief Telenamut. Okay, so we're going to do a little video. This comes from actually WSKG in Binghamton. Has done this lovely little video, so we'll go take a look at that.
In 1779, the American Revolution came to the frontier regions of New York when a continental expedition led by Major General John Sullivan left a path of destruction in its wake, destroying dozens of Native American villages and forcing thousands of their inhabitants to flee north to Canada. Among the villages destroyed during the expedition was Shequaga, often referred to by travelers as Catherine's Town. The village, located on the southern bank of Seneca Lake, got the nickname from its leader, Queen Catherine Montour. Local lore states that Catherine Montour was the great-granddaughter of a French settler and a Huron woman. Catherine married the Seneca Indian chief Telenemut and later assumed leadership of the village after a rival tribe killed him. Catherine Montour was well recognized as the local leader of the Shequaga Seneca, and notable Iroquois chiefs such as Red Jacket and Joseph Brant were said to be frequent visitors. After the Revolution, only a handful of the original inhabitants returned to Catherine's Town, and it is unclear whether Queen Catherine ever returned to the area or lived out her final days in Canada. However, the influx of white settlers who moved into the region named their new village Montour Falls in honor of Queen Catherine. Queen Catherine Montour, Seneca leader and another local legend along New York's path through history.
You can go to the WSKG website and look for their Uniquely New York page, and I guess you can subscribe. They also have a YouTube channel, so they got a lot of neat, interesting stuff on it. I noted that some of the images there they used were obtained from the Schuyler County Historical Museum, which is in Montour Falls, and also the Library of Congress. So very nice video. Also in the valley there is another gorge and waterfall, but the gorge is called Havana Glen, and the village of Montour Falls used to be called Havana back in the 1800s, and I don't know when it was renamed, but the park, the small town park there, does retain that name, and there is it says Eagle Cliff Falls, and they also have the highway department and town clerk's office and so forth there, so it's a town facility. But anyway, the town of Catherine, I guess. And you walk up a trail. Now, if you look just the extreme upper left there, you can see a railing. And there's a path that goes along the cliff in there, back into the short gorge. And it actually continues. There is a trail that does continue way up above this waterfall, but this is what most people see, called Eagle Cliff Falls. Now, another picture of it there. I don't have any video of this right now. I got to go back and get some. I took some years ago, but I don't know where it is. But so why is it called Eagle Cliff Falls? Well, it's because actually you look up in the upper left there. Well, I can't really quite make it out now, but there was in the past the top part of that rock there, where the rock is fallen away, looked sort of like the profile of an eagle or something, or some kind of bird like that. So I think that's how it got its name. Not because there were eagles there, but because the cliff had an image sort of that looked like an eagle. So Eagle Cliff Falls, but it's a charming place. It's not very far to get in there. It's just a couple hundred yards at most, and well worth a visit. So that's just south of the village of Montour Falls, and well worth a visit, like I say. And not this time of year, though. It's going to get icy. I imagine they close it off, just like most of our other gorges. And sometimes when it gets more water on it, like in this summer picture here, you get much more of a full waterfall, and you can see some people are enjoying the water up there. I'm not sure that's something that the park condones, but they don't seem to stop it either. So, okay, so we're going to look at some other stuff. We're going to go to another gorge and a glen called Excelsior Glen. Now, this isn't technically, well, here we'll look at our Finger Lakes map here. This is actually right on the southeast corner of Seneca Lake, so I guess it's no longer in Catherine Valley. Catherine Valley is along Catherine Creek, which is the valley that comes up to the lake. Here we go. So that's Catherine Valley below the lake, and you can maybe make out in the middle there a stream coming out in the lake right in the middle, and that's Catherine Creek. It's a famous trout stream, actually. The first day of trout season, that's like shoulder-to-shoulder trout fishermen. And then there's an undeveloped area in the valley on the right, sort of lower center right. That's a big preserve, Department of Environmental Conservation natural area called Queen Catherine Marsh. So it's named after Queen Catherine, named after Catherine Montour. By the way, they call that Shequaga Falls, but Montour Falls is a village, so I guess they mean the same waterfall, but they didn't call it the village Shequaga. Although the village of the village that Catherine Montour lived in, the Senecas before the Revolution, I believe, was called Shequaga, and I've seen another name for it as well. Anyway, we're going to fly up around here now with in a photograph by a friend of mine, Bill Hecht, whom I've shown many of his photographs in this program. This one on looking south towards, in the upper right there, that is village of Watkins Glen, and then you can see right just behind it in a lighter area, that is Queen Catherine Marsh. And then you follow the shoreline on the other side along to the left, and you can see this sort of dark groove. That's Excelsior Glen, a gorge, which ends right there, almost at the corner of the lake. Here's another Google map of it here. Right at the corner, just above the corner, there's a point there. I'm not sure what they call that point, but there's a gorge, Excelsior Glen. And the Finger Lakes Trail actually goes up through there. Here's a sort of a road map of it showing the creek, and I guess that's Excelsior Creek. I'm not sure. And the gorge has created the stream has eroded the gorge, and then the eroded material from the gorge, the rock and the earth and so forth, have been washed down from the hillside, have been dumped into Seneca Lake there, creating that point of land. Very typical around the Finger Lakes. Same sort of thing at Teganic Falls and Myers Point and so forth in Tompkins County. So now we're going to look at a topographic map here, topographic and trail map, and you might be able to make out under where it says register what's left of Excelsior Glen as a label. And those lines, brown lines, those are all contour lines, they call them. And they each indicate an interval, I think, of 10 feet, maybe. And, something like that, about 10 feet. And so the closer the lines are together, the steeper the landscape is. So you can see as it gets down through the lake, the lines get very close together, and that indicates that the elevation change in a distance, in a horizontal distance, is greater. And then you look in the glen itself, it's all brown. That means it's very steep. That's the size of the glen. So if you're not familiar with topographic maps, that's pretty much how they work. Anyway, the red line is a section of the Finger Lakes Trail, which goes across the state. And you can pick it up right down along the highway there. It comes up along the east side of Catherine Marsh, and actually comes across from Watkins Glen and goes through Watkins Glen State Park. But here, just showing this section at Excelsior Glen and along the highway there, is very close to this sign, which is a Seneca Lake Scenic Byway. I have not checked that out yet. We have the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway over in Ithaca, and I'm pretty familiar with that. But the Seneca Lake Scenic Byway, I've got to look into what some of the attractions and features are on that. But anyway, that sign is very close to where the trail goes in. Okay, so we'll take a look at the beginning of the trail here. This is this sort sort of post here, a marker here that shows it. It's the Finger Lakes Trail, and it's also the North Country National Scenic Trail, that triangular emblem with a blue triangle in it, and that star indicates the North Country National Scenic Trail, of which the Finger Lakes Trail largely is a part. But this goes North Country National Scenic Trail, when it is complete, will go all the way from the Adirondacks, and then pick up the Finger Lakes Trail, and go across the northern tier states all the way to North Dakota, and be the longest footpath in North America. So anyway, the trail goes up the side of the ravine, up above the first little waterfall. Well, it's not so little. And you can see the creek here. So you can't actually get to the first waterfall on the trail, but if you go back to this spot, we're just by the road, and you go straight back there on the right, you can see there's a path kind of worn in there. That's a path down to the creek, and a short distance in, you can see this first waterfall, which is about 30 feet tall, 32 feet tall, something like that. So let's take a look at a little moving video of this first little waterfall. I'm not sure what this one's called. So that's the easiest waterfall to get to in Excelsior Glen. Again, I wouldn't go in this time of year. We're starting to get ice and get pretty tricky in there, but it's very close to the road. Let's go back to our trail map here. Now there's another big waterfall, and if you look just to the right where it says register, the trail register means the trail register. I mean, you sign in saying I'm on the trail, and they can, that way that it helps them know how many people are using the trail, and you can leave notes. And also, if somebody's looking for you and you haven't come home, they can check the trail register. So that's a safety thing. You see the trail goes up about a mile or so, and just to the right of the word register, there's this kind of bowl, and I think that's where the biggest waterfall is. And I didn't go up there. I was carrying heavy video camera equipment, and wasn't feeling that ambitious that day. Had already seen some other waterfalls, so I didn't go all the way up there. In fact, I've been told it's hard to get a good view of the waterfall, the big waterfall, which is, I'll show you a picture of it later. I guess it's called Empire Falls or Excelsior Falls, about 100 feet high. And you actually have to go off trail to go in there. And this is all private property, so it's okay to stay on the Finger Lakes Trail, but the landowners don't really appreciate you wandering off the property, and there's all kinds of liability issues, so you really need to respect landowner rights. Anyway, I went up. You see where it says parking up there? Well, that's on Jolly Road, and that's up the hill, and I went up there, actually another occasion, I think, and got on the Finger Lakes Trail up there, and I went down. Okay, you see where it goes straight down. I went down from there into the woods, down to cross Excelsior Glen. I was thinking I might be able to get a view of the waterfall from this direction. There's another one of those posts there with information. Once again, this is private property on here, so it's only by the landowner's permission and generosity that lets us go on there. So you really have to respect that. Here's a tree stand back in the woods that somebody's built probably for archery, for waiting for deer to come by, and it's probably being used this time of year. And then deep back in the woods, start to get towards the glen, a view through the trees to the other side of the glen. And that's probably looking over the deep part. But you cross, the trail actually crosses just above the big waterfall some distance. And it's a very gentle spot. It's actually a really nice spot. So let me just see where my notes are on this. Yeah, here's another little waterfall that's in that area, but not the big one. Then there's a view. You can actually see down to Seneca Lake, so you're really perched up on the hillside here. So, okay, we're gonna have a little video here, and it shows the very top of. It shows where I just was, and it also has the very top of that big waterfall, which I didn't actually get to this time. So let's take a look at that coming up here. So that was the top of that big waterfall, I think, the Empire Falls, 100 feet high or so. Actually, here's a picture of what it looks like that I got off the internet. We didn't show any of the waterfalls in Watkins Glen. They'll do that another time, but obviously that's a place where many of the waterfalls are. I've read that there are something like 77 waterfalls in Schuyler County and like 135 in Tompkins County. So there's a lot of waterfalls out there. These are just some of the ones that are more accessible. So that's all our time. So thanks for joining me, and I encourage you to turn off this screen and go outside and go for a walk in the park. See you again soon. Thank you.